Okay, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Happy to see you all here, especially in a Sunday before Labor Day, which is amazing, amazing. And I'm sure we all are here, the discarnate ones and the incarnate ones, because we need to learn something from today's lecture. So I'm going to be doing our reading from Divaldo Pereira Franco, Happy Life. Be wise. Invest in your future. What is happening to you now is the result of a past that you can do nothing about it. But what is to come depends on what you do to starting today. While you reap the effects of past actions, your present actions have future consequences. As you sow, so you shall reap. You are destined for goodness. How to get there is your choice through quick or delayed action and setbacks. Suffering is not inevitable. It is the result of a wrong choice. Invest in tomorrow and you will be happy beginning today. There you go. So let's have our prayer. Let's close our eyes. Elevate our thoughts to God, our Creator, to Jesus, our Master of Love, our guiding light, and to all the spirits who guide us here today, to the ones that follow us since we start this present lifetime, and to the ones who wish us good in every way. We ask you to brighten up our lives and our minds for today's learnings, and may we practice them and remember them in the following week. And so be it. Okay, so today's lecture is going to be given by Jo, and is about meekness and passiveness. What's the difference? Thank you, Jo and Thiago. Jo, please. Is this yours or mine? It's yours.
Of course. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Everybody doing great? Last weekend for the summer vacation time. Everybody goes back to school, back to work, back to normal life. So I'm very happy that you took time this morning to be here with us. And as Sandra said, we're going to talk about meekness and how it may be different than passiveness. Now, I'm Brazilian. Portuguese is my first language. So I learned English as a second language. And I never really used or saw people use the word meekness until when? Until we study the Bible. Why is that? Who remembers which part of the Bible talks about meekness, about the meek?
Come to me, the meekness.
No, but good choice. Those are come to me, the children. Meekness, the meek. Blessed are the meek.
Yes.
It is the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5. Certainly my favorite passage of the Bible. Recently, I was thinking that if ChatGPT existed at the time that the Bible was written, and somebody says, please summarize the whole Bible, the whole New Testament, ChatGPT would come up with the Sermon on the Mount. Because everything we need to know about the New Testament, except the stories and some of the allegory around it, but the key messages that Jesus came to tell us is summarized in Matthew 5. Sandra and I had the chance to actually visit Israel, the Lake of Galilee, right? The Sea of Galilee, actually. And we went to the place that people think it was where Jesus was there when he did the Sermon on the Mount. It is a mount. It's kind of a hill that goes up, beautiful, serene. Everything is quiet. It's a very kind of special place. And I can see why he chose that place to give his sermon, because it allowed him to be at the top of this hill, right? He didn't have to be all the way to the top, probably only about halfway to the top. And there was plenty of room for people to sit and be below him and listen to these fantastic words. Matthew 5 is a very long chapter, but the first part is what's going to focus us. It's called the Beatitudes. Beatitudes because it's talking about who is blessed, right? And I'm going to read it, the whole part of the Beatitudes, because it's always nice to listen to it every so often, but it will set the stage for how we're going to try to explain why so many people have a hard time understanding what Jesus was really trying to say. And we have to put that in the context of what it would have been like 2,000 years ago to hear those words, and how is it different or not if we listen to them today. So, in Matthew 5:3, he starts with, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." That's already an interesting one, but not the subject for today. "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." Again, very striking. Here's the key one that is the theme of today. It's 5, Matthew 5:5. "Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth." A lot of confusion about almost every word here except blessed. And we will go into more detail on that. "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will show mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." Sometimes peacemakers translated to peace-loving, basically kind of the same thing. "Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is the reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." And I'm just going to add one more that's a little bit later, which is Matthew 5:21-22. And it says, "You have learned what was said to the ancients. You shall not kill. And whoever kills shall deserve being condemned to judgment. But I say to you that whoever shows anger against his brother shall deserve being condemned to judgment. Whoever says to his brother, Raka, shall deserve to be condemned by the council. And whoever says to him, you fool, shall deserve being condemned to the fire of hell." Strong words. So let's start at the beginning here of the Beatitudes. He first begins by those who are poor in spirit and those who are mourning, people who are vulnerable. Those are the people who are now taking on the acceptance of their faith on earth. They're not kind of revolting against the situation, not necessarily accepting them, but they are living with the faith that they will inherit the kingdom of heaven. They will be taken to be next to Jesus and God. And then he talks about blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Meekness, gentleness. Imagine, again, I love my time travel machine. Go back, you're there. Blessed to be listening to Jesus say these words to you. What has been your experience in life up to this point? If you go back even further, hundreds of thousands of years, the evolution of humankind has been one of struggles, wars, fights, conquest, violence. In the beginning, our ancestors lived by their instincts. That's what drove the majority of their actions. Instinct to take, instinct to attack anyone who prevents you from taking, from conquering. Later on, as we came into clans, into small groups of humans, these became family units, tribal units, who would then fight with other tribal units for the resources, whether it be land, water, food, animals, hunting, right? Women, if they wanted to procreate and have more women for them. So historically, we have been trained to accept that the way to gather more stuff, more material things, can be by hard work, by luck. Sometimes you just fall into a place that everything is easy, fruits come out of the trees, you don't have to do a lot of work. Or often by conquest, by violence. So this is still true at the time of Jesus. Remember, that whole region was under Roman Empire control. Romans were big empire because of their armies, because of their warlike attitude to conquering. But it wasn't just them. Everywhere else, from China, from Africa, all of the kind of growth, all of the concentration of human beings was being accelerated or supported by violence. So everybody has kind of the acceptance that this is always going to be like that. The best we could wish for is that those who are driving this violence are somehow going to do good things for me, right? That I'm going to be benefiting from their violence, from their conquest. My family will be safe. I will have more opportunities to have land to plant stuff. I have more people to feed. So everybody takes this passive attitude that even though I'm not committing the violence, maybe I will benefit from it. And I'm in no position to challenge it. So imagine you're one of these people that are listening to Jesus. And this is your understanding of life. You were conquered by a number of different groups, armies, now under a foreign control. Why would you think that these words make any sense? Being meek, and I'm going to inherit the earth? That's not possible. Because as soon as I start to inherit stuff, somebody stronger than me will come and take it away. And I'll be dead. Right? Remember, they still didn't have this understanding of the eternal life as now we understand it. Very difficult to understand. And I'm sure the apostles and the followers of Jesus would have a lot of questions. Should we just accept and be passive in the point of the tide of the lecture? If we're passive, maybe we can get some crumbs at the end. Is that what you're saying? But how do we inherit the earth? We're inheriting crumbs, whatever's left over, if we're lucky. We're always going to be under the control and the good humor of those who actually hold the power of wars, of armies. So why would Jesus say this? He was talking in all of the previous, he was talking about inheriting or being accepted or owning the kingdom of heaven. If he had said the meek will inherit the kingdom of heaven, they might have understood that you have to be a good person, right? And meekness is associated with goodness. Maybe that's what he meant, but that's not what he said. And not according to the scribes that brought us his lecture. How can we inherit the earth? Well, let's take a first of all a bigger picture now about kingdoms and violence. What's the main thing they have in common? All of the great empires, what do they have in common? They eventually die. No empire survives forever. Violence can be a quick and often effective means of achieving a goal. But there's no guarantees that you will be able to sustain it. On the contrary, history has taught us that every empire will go through as a being of its own. It is born, it grows, reaches its maximum, and then eventually dies. Dies because the same violence that gave way to it becoming so powerful will be the reason it will undermine itself. He who lives by the sword dies by the sword. And so empires, they will die by their own swords for different reasons often. So we know that violence has been a common means that humanity has somehow evolved. But again, if we look back, even though wars can introduce a lot of new technology, because we're really good at finding ways to kill each other, right? We can find new weapons, new materials, new processes to really, really destroy each other. But after that phase is gone, after the war is gone and the violence is now being undermined itself and these empires start to come down, those technologies are used for good. Most of them anyway, right? Nuclear energy. We can get nuclear power now to bring electricity and other things. Still a big shadow over our heads, but you see what I'm trying to get. That even though we understand that power is very predominant in our history, what lasts, what exists, what persists after each one of these empires fall is a common thread of goodness, making sure that people are somehow benefiting from this. And how does this happen? Does it happen by revolution? No, sometimes the revolutions are used to bring down an empire. But the progress, the way that we find new means to help each other, these happen quietly. This happened because thousands and thousands and thousands of people are working to find little inventions, little ways to improve everybody's life. And this doesn't go away. Dictators, first of all, they eventually die, but even their dynasties eventually will die as well. They don't want to persist because they are not the real thing that we are here to do. All of these empires exist out of material greed. And whether it's material land, people, resources, power, material things, you can't take them with you. And they also come to an end. What is really important, what is really lasting, are the non-material things. It is the kindness. It is the charity we do. It is finding ways to cure diseases, finding ways to keep people happy even when they're most distressed. So this was a difficult message 2,000 years ago to understand. But what is something that it takes time for us to really absorb is that the meekness that Jesus is talking about and the earth that he's talking about, we inherited the earth, is much more of an internal transformation than an external activity. We must learn to overcome our violent instincts. We must educate ourselves, transform ourselves to be meek, to avoid violent thoughts, especially violent acts, to be certain, and this is where meekness comes in, to be certain of that we know what is the right thing. Meekness is not a state of passiveness. It's on exactly the opposite. To become meek, you have to work a lot. You have to work very hard. And you have to take on principles, ideas, values, and transform yourself based on these things. Because they will persist. They will become eternal, not only in this life for your spirit, but for all the lives that will follow. And because we're still going to be here for a long, long time in this earth, because we're still far from moving on to other levels and other planets, the earth that we inherit is going to be a result of what we do today. The violence will disappear. The violence is transitory. The goodness, the meekness will persist. So when we come back, we will inherit what we have seeded. Just like the reading that Sandra did before we started. So this is the message that we start with. It's not the end, it's the beginning, right? That the first ones to be subjected to the meekness is ourselves. And Jesus warns us, and in the Spirit's book we see this, warns about the fake meek. So somebody read this in the Bible, and then they publicly, they're very kind, very smiling, open doors for people. They go to church and they pray and to do all the right things. They're very gentle in their words. But when they get home, behind closed doors, they become a different person. Jekyll and Hyde, right? So they become a monster to their family, whether through verbal abuse, physical abuse, or they go home and start talking kind of poisonous things about other people, gossiping. So all of this that they show to a certain group that they want to please, it's just a mask. So this is not the kind of meekness that Jesus is asking us to be. That's why the transformation begins with us. That we're able to be so comfortable in our beliefs that nobody can take that away from us. Nobody can make us feel violent because somebody is challenging that. I'm sure everybody has this feeling. I mean, if you're challenged about something and you're not quite sure about that thing, whether let's say in school or in professionally, somebody challenged you because you said something and you said something without thinking, and then suddenly you're on the defensive now. And when you're on the defensive, what do? Push back with violence. Because you're uncertain, you're uneasy with your thoughts. But on the other hand, if you're really kind of thought this through, if you've been through this thought process many times, you're so confident that what you said is correct, that reflects your true beliefs, how do you react? You react more calmly. You explain, you reinforce, you push back. So you're not being passive, you're actually being quite active and often very effective. because nothing works better to try to counter an unfair attack than your level of certainty, of true belief in what you're saying. So this is the kind of meekness now that once we have inside us, we can start to project in our actions. True, if you're in a kind of a conflict situation, you sometimes can't talk your way out of it and you will suffer. Some people will actually die. Some people have died, have martyred themselves on those beliefs. And you might think, well, that was kind of useless, wasn't it? You stood with your meekness, you tried to do the right thing, and then suddenly you're gone. Now, it's true that it would feel that way if you didn't think that we're eternal beings, that the Spirit lives on. But that was just one more test, one more step towards our journey to perfection. We will come back. We will come back more certain of those beliefs. That's the meekness that Jesus wants us to be, not passive. Passive, it means giving up. Passive means letting the other side know that they're right. Passiveness often comes with cowardice. Passive people are not cowards. They're very courageous. Just they're standing up for what they think is right. Or better yet, they're standing up for what they know is right. There's a good study of this point in Gospel according to Spiritism, right? And chapter 9, blessed are the meek and the peace-loving, right? So it starts with the idea of insults and violence. Then there is the Spirit's teaching to affability and meekness, patience, obedience and resignation, anger. I won't read this all, but I do encourage you, if you like this topic and if you want to explore a little bit more, if you have already read this, read it again. Read chapter 9 with these thoughts, right? Of what Jesus is asking us with regards to meekness. So in terms of instance in violence, it's interesting. In the passage that I read here, the Matthew 5, verses 21 to 22, it talks about murderers are going to be judged. Hey, everybody, hey! And then says, but whoever shows anger is going to be equally just. And people say, what do you mean? Can't be angry? Am I just as bad as a murderer, a killer, because I'm angry? And then he goes on. Whoever calls his brother Raka. Raka is a Jewish term that means really. Usually when you say this word, you spit on the ground. You know the idea. You're the lowest, the worst. You're like scum. So if I call somebody that, I'm going to be as bad as a murderer, even though that person probably deserves to be called Raka. And then if you call somebody, you fool, you're also going to be judged. So how can all of these things be treated equally? Right? Well, they're all equal, first and foremost, in the sense that this is not what God wants us to be. He doesn't want us to be killing each other. It's one of the 10 commandments, thou shalt not kill. Now, there's no commandment that says, thou shalt not call your neighbor a fool. But what he's saying is that you will be judged because this is where you want to go. And you're not there yet. And you're, every time you slip, you're taking a little bit longer to get there. When you show anger, when you curse somebody, when you insult them, you're not being meek. You're being aggressive. You agree? These are all aggressive actions. Anger, obviously, it's easy to understand aggressive. But when you call them scum, raka, you're being aggressive. Even if you're not telling to their face, if you're telling to somebody else that so-and-so is scum. scum of the earth. You're being aggressive with words. And we know as Spiritism, we've seen a lot of other lectures before, thoughts. They're powerful. They shape the world around us, how we perceive and how others who are listening to our words perceive it. So this is a type of violence. When you insult somebody, you fool is just one example. You could have used many different other expressions, right? But when you say you fool, first of all, this means it's face to face, right? The first one, not necessarily. This one is very clear. You're going to the person and saying, you're a fool. What I'm trying to do is prove my superiority to you by insulting you, by making you smaller. That's not meekness, right? Meekness is if I think you're wrong, I explain to you why I think you're wrong, and I give you a chance to change my mind. That doesn't mean I have to change my mind, but I've said what I needed to say. I don't have to say it with insults. We're all brothers and sisters. Why we would want to be constantly challenging, insulting them. And this is so true today, isn't it? With the world that we live today, it is so difficult to be meek. We have beautiful tools, social media, internet, that gave us so much, but it's also driving wedges between us. Algorithms that are designed to provoke us at every turn, to show probably what's the worst of somebody else so that we feel hatred towards them. That we can no longer have used to be called civilized conversation in disagreement. It's all with hatred. I'm certainly guilty of that. Very difficult. Now we know that we are on a journey towards progress, right? So we're far from it. So I sometimes try to forgive myself for these slips, right? Because we're still in a very kind of imperfect world, imperfect ourselves, imperfect the people around us. And we fear. We fear that if we don't react, that the immediate results will be very bad. We believe that society is being destroyed somehow. And this works on both sides of the spectrum of political alignment today. But we must what? We must think what we're doing, right? We're still fighting instincts. We're still fighting kind of an ecosystem that rather than promote our wellness, promote our understanding and fraternity, is trying to poke at our most vile instincts as a way to make money, as a way to push an agenda. At the same time, we still have wars where innocents are killed by drones, missiles. Wars where innocents are starved to death in order to achieve a material goal of land. Ethnic cleansing. Get these people out of my land. So Jesus' words 2,000 years ago would have sounded very strange. Now they don't sound strange, but they sound equally difficult to achieve. Sometimes it seems it's even more difficult to achieve. But I tend to be always the more optimistic person, right? I think that there's a bigger plan, a bigger purpose. All of this is happening. Often they say that in order to cleanse what is underneath, it must be shown the light. It has to come up so we see for what it is. And seeing what it is can be very painful. It can be hurtful. It can hurt people. It can kill people. And we must keep our faith that in our eternal journey, that these people will be rewarded, or they will learn, and they will come back, and some of the meekness will help them inherit some of the earth. Continue with the chapter 9. It talks about affability and meekness. And again, this is basically what I've been talking about. That meekness, affability, to be likable, to be gentle with your words, gentle with your thoughts. That's the real message that Jesus has given us in this sermon. Think, but then observe what you just thought. Say, then observe what you just said. And think, was this the meekest way, the gentlest way I could have said something? Why do we always try to be harsh with the intent of hurting the person that we're talking to? Psychologists talk about buttons that we like to press. So here I am, possibly in a position of a little bit more strength, trying to hurt somebody because I think they might have hurt me. So I know what hurts them, what words I can say that will touch them more strongly, that will make them feel weak, make them cry, make them hurt. The opposite of meekness is meanness to me. So why would we choose to be mean? Why would we want to live like that? Be mean to everyone unless the few people that I chose that I would not be mean to. That is no path to an evolved future for our civilization, for our spirits, and for this earth. Earth only has a chance to move forward, to progress, as meekness becomes more prevalent than meanness and violence. When Jesus said that when somebody strikes you, show them the other side of your face, the other cheek, was he saying that physically? That somebody hits you in the face, should show the other face? No. The other face is not your body. It's your attitude. It's the other way of dealing with one another. So the answer to violence is not passiveness, hit me again. That's not what he meant. The opposite of this violence, show them how we can reach good progress with love, with compassion, and being meek, being gentle, being polite. That's what he wanted us to understand. And the next, it's a very short section in this chapter, is about patience. Oh my God, patience. How many people here believe they've come to this life to be more patient, to learn how to be more patient? Yes. Patience is what? What I've been saying is not reacting to the instinct. Because the opposite of being patient is being instinctive, right? Being reacting immediately, right? Your kind of adrenaline goes through your body and suddenly the words just come out of your mouth, right? Or you're waiting for something and it's not coming to you fast enough, and then suddenly you're cursing who? Who do you blame? Well, first of all, you blame everybody around you. If that doesn't work, you blame everybody who you don't know, the world, life. And then when things are really, really tough, you blame God. Who's the person you don't blame? Yourself. So part of this concept of meekness is patience. Patience will give you time to stop your immediate instinct, your quick reaction. Think about it. Think of how you want to address, not to back away, right? Not to say, I'm not going to respond necessarily, but go through the process and says, okay, what is the most effective way that I can express my revolt or my dissatisfaction, or try to educate somebody that what they're doing is either wrong conceptually or in principle, or something that they're doing that's hurting me, without trying to hurt them. Because if I go with hurting them, you know what comes next? More violence towards me. And that's the never-ending cycle. And that's why in the beginning I said empires cease to exist. Because you can't control that. That violence is self-feeding. Eventually it will eat itself, right? Because everybody just lives by violence. And eventually you who are the group that was liked by the dictator, then suddenly you're his or her enemy. And then guess what? Everything that you were clapping that they were doing to others, it will do to you. Inevitable. Every instance of empires has fallen that way. Either by violence, greed, right? Starving people, making them kind of disappear. Or just simply giving one's completely to pleasure, lust, and other activities that are not productive. They're all material. So whereas some of the other Beatitudes talk about the kingdom of heaven, this one is more short-term, right? Because the kingdom of heaven we will achieve as we raise our level of perfection over many, many different lives. Meekness is what we do in the meantime to make this earth a better place to be, to prepare it to its own evolution. Remember, planetary evolution, we've seen lectures about that. The planet has to evolve. And how does a planet evolve? By the people in the planet evolving, right? So how do we bring people? It's not just like one small group of enlightened people are on Earth now, so now suddenly Earth is evolved. Now the vast majority of the population has to evolve with you. How do we do this if not with meekness? Are we going to force them to be meek? That's kind of an oxymoron in itself, right? I'm going to spank meekness into you. Doesn't work that way, does it? So patience, folks. Patience also has a very important context around it. What kind of patience is most important? What drives our patience? Faith. If we don't have faith, we don't have patience. We have to have faith that our meekness is the right thing to do. That we do not need to be violent. We do not need to be insulted. What we need is courage. Kind of seems a little bit contradictory, right? The meek has a lot of courage. But it takes a lot of courage, to the point that most of us have not even come close to achieving this because it requires a lot of work, a lot of internal transformation. The meek does not try to convert people. Conversion is an act of some level of violence because you're forcing them to convert. Meekness is the path to transformation internally and to those we would like to help. And who was our best example of meekness? Of course, Jesus Christ. That's an easy answer, folks. Anytime I say, who is the best example of anything good? The answer is always Jesus. There have been other people who have preached nonviolence as a means of transformation, right? And we can only hope that more of us will follow that example, that follow paths of compassion, charity, right, and love, that those make a change. I want to use an example a little bit out of my practice, but I think Tony understands about, when you're having some kind of a fight, right? You don't try to fight violence directly with violence. Use the violence as a means their violence as a means to bring them down. That's the whole essence, as well as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and others. You use their momentum, their violence, and let them hurt themselves with it. Right? Another example that I have is in our mediumship sessions that we have. Often we have very hard spirits that come at us, at the mediums, at the session, very aggressively. Do they think they're going to change us? Do they think they're going to change our minds? No, they're not there to change our minds. Their aggressiveness has a different purpose. Their purpose is to disrupt, to break the balance, the equilibrium, right? Because if the medium who is talking to that spirit, if they fall into the trap of trying to be aggressive back to them, it has broken the chain of thought across all the mediums in the table. What we have to do is show the other face. Show them kindness, love, understanding. Say that we understand why they're angry, but that they should not be angry. Because that anger is not hurting us, because we're comfortable. Comfortable in our skin, comfortable in our spirit, comfortable in our thoughts, our beliefs, our ideas. And that we're there to support them at the time that they're ready to let the coin drop, as we say. And often we see that happening, and it's a very touching moment when that happens. So violence cannot be fought with violence. You can defend yourself, of course, physically, because we are in the physical world. So being meek doesn't mean that if you're being robbed and someone's trying to hit you, that you don't defend yourself. Maybe you even try to hit back if that's what you think is going to help. But ultimately, the only thing you achieve at that point is to be able to somehow get away from the situation. It didn't resolve the situation. Maybe it avoided being worse to you. But ultimately, if we are going to inherit the earth, we have to think what earth we want to inherit. Do we want to continue to inherit an earth full of violence, insults, anger, division? Or do we want to inherit an earth that is meek, gentle, charitable, a place that we will all be happy to live in? The last section of this chapter is anger, right? Because that's our instinct. We're instinctively angry, unfortunately, right? We're angry with things that we don't like. We're angry with things that bothers us. We're angry with things we don't have, right? So we need to initially manage our anger, and then replace our anger with kindness. Do this every day, and you're all doing your little bit, your little effort to inherit a much better earth in your next incarnations. Thank you. Okay, questions that I probably won't be able to answer. Questions, comments? Everybody here meek? Really, really meek? Or just mm? Mm.
One concept that I before I knew about the meek, I knew about the passive, but I didn't know about the meek. So actually, it was interesting because I was talking about that with my daughter yesterday. And we were saying exactly the way that I heard something similar before was the opposite. So we were having so there are two kinds of people: the tiger and the sheep, and there is nothing wrong with neither. It's just the way that they behave.
Correct.
Sometimes the tiger wants to beat the sheep, right? But in this case, it's obvious who can protect, how you can see how you can protect yourself, right? The sheep probably couldn't run. But how the meek can have tools to protect themselves. Like in this case, if you are too meek, too passive, you can't avoid that a mean person will try to take advantage of you. And then
Well, it depends on the situation, right? So like I said, if it's a physical situation, somebody's coming at you and is hitting you, by all means, find ways to protect yourself, right? Don't be passive. I mean, being meek is not being a punching bag, right? That's the most obvious one. Protect yourself, right? But let me give you an example. I saw one of these videos. They said that social media pushes to us. Somebody was stopped at a traffic light. Guy on a motorcycle with a gun comes in to rob them. The driver takes the gun away. The robber panics, goes out. Right? He flees. What does the guy in the car do? Shoots him in the back and kills him. So that's not self-defense. Right? Because he was no longer in danger at that point. The guy was running away, but he was angry. He wanted revenge. He's been seeing all of these messages that a good robber is a dead robber. But that thief, right? So he took his anger and killed that person. So he already committed a big sin, right? By killing. It was cowardly. Was the first guy a coward by pointing a gun to him? Absolutely, he was wrong, right? But would a meek person do? They would protect themselves, take the gun away, call the police or do whatever. A meek person, kind person, would not kill that individual. You don't know their story. You don't know why they're doing this. You're not there to judge them at that point. And what you have done, you have turned the tables, right? From victim, you became the aggressor. So that there is a fine line there, right? When you're trying to protect yourself and then suddenly all of your anger, this is why there's a section on anger here, comes out. And suddenly the target of the anger probably does not deserve it all, right? There's a lot of injustice. I always joke with my kids since they were young, that says life is not fair and then you die, right? Because that's true. If life was completely fair, we would be in a perfect world. We're far away from a perfect world. So would you be excused that sometimes you let your acts of revenge or violence take place to protect what you think is protecting your family from starvation or whatever? I'm not the one who's going to judge that, right? And if that's the thing you need to do, if you truly believe that that's the alternative you have, then I'm not going to tell you not to do it. Who am I to say that, right? I can't walk in your shoes. But what we can listen and learn from what Jesus is saying is, don't let your anger, your uncontrolled instincts, your desire for revenge be an excuse. Use as an excuse your wanting to be fairness in your life.
I think
He's got to follow.
I think and I believe that this chapter is a huge red light for all of us to check on our own weakness. Because this, what I'm trying to say is that this is it's a way that I still have all those instincts in me. So this is a huge learning tool that for all devices, they're still living inside my head or my thoughts or whatever. So this is, for me, this is an opportunity to check on my vices. Why am I still trying to curse that guy just because he passed me on a way that he shouldn't? On driving, just driving. Our thoughts come and bring all this, that we still have it. So learn from it, you know? Try to put this in practice, because it doesn't help you if you just come here, listen to the lectures or study the books and everything, if you're not practicing it in your daily life, little things that happens to you.
If this was like an Oriental kind of discussion, I would say that meekness equals Zen, being in balance with yourself, but also being a Zen master and a karate master at the same time, because we're still living in a perfect world.
No, what I was referring was more in case, like you mentioned, the leaders, the civilizations. And so you mentioned here the example of the mean ones. But when a person sometimes is very benevolent, try to help and feed, sometimes you often find people that take that as you are a fool and try to take advantage of you.
Mhm.
Like I saw that happen with my father back in Brazil. I tried to help some people with that. And at a certain point, I had to tell them, I said, listen, don't confuse the fact that I'm being generous with the fact that I'm stupid. You don't know the limits. I'll have to cut everything. Right? So that's what I was referring, not the.
Yeah, meekness also has an underlying concept of knowledge underneath it. For you to be truly meek, you have to be very knowledgeable of what life is, what you are, what are the important things that we should be striving for, right? Economically, we can all fall prey to these tricks to get money out of us, right? We all probably have someone in our family who has fallen into one of these tricks already. So, but have faith, have patience, right? Because in some sense, that's money, right? That's physical things. That's what they're looking for, material things. And when we are faced with these lessons, because they are lessons, we have to fall back in our belief that there are things a lot more important than what is material. Patrick, any questions from the internet? Very quiet. Everybody's at the lake.
We have a lot of people online, but we don't have questions.
I thank them for listening if they're still there. And I hope you will come back after Labor Day for next week. We have a lecture on the 7th. Thank you for joining us. For those who will stay, we will now prepare ourselves for the Pasi. And